Some heroes don't retire. They wait for the moment the world needs them again. The first thing Officer Nathan Calder notices is the silence. Not the kind that comes at night in downtown Vancouver when the rain softens the streets and the harbor fog rolls between glass towers like drifting smoke. This silence is heavier. Wrong somehow. It hangs beneath the collapsed service tunnel under Granville Station where dozens of emergency lights flicker against broken concrete and wet steel beams. Men from TERA, the Toronto Emergency Response Agency specialized in underground rescue operations, move quickly through clouds of dust and freezing vapor, their radios crackling in sharp bursts that vanish almost immediately into the darkness below. Somewhere under nearly 30 meters of collapsed transit infrastructure, Chief Commander Elias Mercer is still alive. At least that is what they hope. The toxic air sensors can barely stabilize. Thermal drones lose signal within seconds. Every rescue robot sent underground returns blind or damaged. And standing at the edge of the fractured tunnel entrance, unmoving beneath the cold drizzle, is an old Doberman no one expected to see again. Valor's black and rust coat glistens beneath rotating amber lights from parked rescue trucks. His broad chest rises slowly, steam curling from his breath into the night air. The years show in him now. A faded scar cuts across one ear. His muzzle has silvered around the edges. One paw trembles faintly against the soaked pavement from an injury that never healed properly after his final deployment. Yet his amber eyes remain fixed on the darkness below as though he can hear something no machine can detect. Around him, younger officers exchange uneasy glances. One paramedic whispers quietly, "That dog's retired." Another shakes his head. "He's too old for this." Nathan says nothing. The 41-year-old officer stands beside the Doberman with rain soaking through his dark tactical jacket, his gloved hand resting gently against the dog's neck. He knows the smell drifting from the tunnel. Wet concrete. Electrical smoke. Gas leaking through fractured utility lines. Fear. He also knows something else. Valor remembers this kind of darkness. 3 years earlier, the dog had been one of the finest underground search K9s in Western Canada. Faster than thermal imaging. More reliable than sonar. During disasters, rescuers trusted his instincts more than their own instruments. But after a mission beneath an industrial chemical site near Burnaby went wrong, everything changed. His handler died during the collapse. Valor survived. Barely. After that day, the Doberman stopped responding the same way. Loud sounds made him freeze. Tight spaces unsettled him. Rescue Command quietly labeled him operationally unstable. 2 months ago, he had been scheduled for auction alongside outdated field equipment and damaged transport crates. $30. That was all anyone offered. Some laughed when Nathan signed the papers. Others called it pity. One officer even joked that the old dog probably cost more in food than he was worth. But Nathan had seen something different that afternoon. Not weakness. Not failure. Recognition. The kind soldiers carry after surviving things they never fully leave behind. Now, standing beside the fractured mouth of the collapsed station while freezing rain taps softly against emergency barriers, Nathan feels the leash tighten slightly in his hand. Valor takes one slow step forward. Then another. His cropped ears lift toward the darkness. The noise around the rescue zone fades beneath the low distant groan of shifting concrete deep underground. Then the Doberman stops completely. His body stiffens. His amber eyes narrow. And for the first time all night, the old dog growls. The growl is low at first. Almost buried beneath the hiss of leaking steam pipes and the distant pulse of emergency sirens echoing through downtown Vancouver. But Nathan feels it vibrate through the leash like a memory waking up. Around the perimeter lights, officers from TERA continue moving equipment across the soaked pavement while engineers argue over unstable structural readings. Somewhere beneath the collapsed transit tunnel, oxygen levels are falling. One rescuer mutters that Commander Mercer may only have 40 minutes left before the air pockets become too toxic to survive. Another points toward the underground access map spread across the hood of a rescue truck. None of the routes make sense anymore. The cave-in twisted the service corridors into a maze of crushed concrete and flooded maintenance shafts. Nathan kneels slowly beside Valor. Rainwater drips from the brim of his dark cap onto the pavement between them. The Doberman's muscles remain tense beneath his aging frame, every instinct focused somewhere deep below the earth. "You smell him, don't you?" Nathan whispers softly. Valor's ears twitch once. Then the old dog pulls harder toward the collapsed entrance. Behind them, Deputy Officer Colin Reeves lets out a dry laugh. "You can't seriously be thinking about sending that dog down there." Nathan rises without looking back. "He's still operational." "Operational?" Colin scoffs. "That dog washed out years ago." Nearby, a younger paramedic shifts uncomfortably, glancing between Valor and the unstable tunnel mouth. Nobody says what they are all thinking. The last rescue dog sent underground panicked after 20 meters and had to be pulled back coughing from the gas exposure. The environment below is too narrow for personnel carriers and too unstable for drone navigation. Concrete continues settling every few minutes with deep grinding noises that ripple through the streets like distant thunder. Even the rain feels colder now. Nathan studies the darkness beyond the fractured tunnel barrier. He remembers another night 3 winters earlier near Burnaby Harbor when he first saw Valor after the accident. The Doberman had been lying alone inside a quarantine kennel at the Sarah facility, the Canadian Emergency Recovery Agency specializing in industrial disaster response. No barking. No aggression. Just silence. His once polished tactical harness hung loose across his ribs while fluorescent lights reflected dimly in those same amber eyes. Every other handler who approached the kennel received the same warning from supervisors. Unpredictable. Traumatized. Decommissioned. But Nathan remembered what the old trainer said quietly before leaving the room. He didn't fail the mission. He survived it. That sentence stayed with him long after the paperwork was signed. Now, standing in the freezing rain while emergency crews scramble around collapsing infrastructure, Nathan feels that same truth settling inside his chest again. Valor was never broken. Just abandoned by people who stopped listening. A sudden burst of static erupts from one of the radios near the command truck. Everyone freezes. Through the interference comes a weak sound. Not words exactly. More like metal scraping somewhere deep underground followed by faint coughing. Commander Mercer is alive. For one brief second, hope cuts through the exhaustion spreading across the rescue site. Then the signal dies again. An engineer rushes forward holding a tablet covered in flashing structural warnings. "The southern support wall is shifting another 6 centimeters, she says urgently. "If it drops again, the lower tunnel collapses completely." Colin turns sharply toward Nathan. "Even if the dog finds him, nobody can reach that section safely." Nathan says nothing. He slowly unclips Valor's leash. The metal latch clicks softly beneath the rain. Around them, several officers stare in disbelief. The Doberman steps closer. To the edge of the fractured entrance, his breathing calm now, focused. Dust drifts upward from the darkness below, carrying the bitter scent of concrete, rust, and leaking chemicals. Somewhere underneath the city, a man is waiting in the dark. Nathan places one hand gently against Valor's neck. The old dog leans into it for the briefest moment. Soldier beside soldier. No commands. No speeches. Just trust. Then Valor lowers his head toward the tunnel and disappears into the black. The darkness swallows Valor almost immediately. 1 second the Doberman is visible beneath the flashing amber rescue lights, muscles moving carefully across broken concrete, and the next he vanishes beneath the collapsed station as though the tunnel itself has closed around him. Nathan remains at the entrance listening. Rain taps softly against twisted steel barriers while distant sirens echo through downtown Vancouver, blurred by fog drifting in from the harbor. Somewhere below the streets, water drips steadily through fractured pipes into flooded maintenance corridors. Then silence returns again. The kind of silence that presses against the ribs. Behind Nathan, rescue personnel continue preparing emergency breathing gear and portable supports, though fewer people are speaking now. Even the officers who mocked the old Doberman earlier seem uneasy watching the darkness where he disappeared. Deputy Officer Colin Reeves folds his arms tightly against the cold. You really trust him that much? Nathan keeps his eyes on the tunnel. More than half the equipment here. Colin shakes his head, though there is less sarcasm in it now. A low rumble suddenly rolls through the ground beneath their boots. Dust falls from the fractured ceiling near the tunnel entrance. Several officers instinctively step backward as engineers shout fresh stability warnings from the command station. One of the monitors flashes red again. Oxygen levels underground continue dropping. Somewhere in the city above them, trains have stopped completely. Thousands of commuters remain stranded across Vancouver while emergency broadcasts urge citizens to avoid the downtown core. Yet down here beneath the cold rain and emergency floodlights, everything has narrowed into one old dog moving through the dark alone. Nearly 40 meters inside the collapsed tunnel, Valor advances carefully across unstable debris. The narrow service corridor smells of damp concrete, burnt wiring, and chemical residue sharp enough to sting the lungs. Small fragments of dust drift constantly through the air like gray snowfall. Every few seconds another sound echoes through the underground maze. Metal shifting. Water hissing through ruptured pipes. The deep groan of stressed concrete somewhere overhead. Valor moves slowly but with purpose. His aging joints ache with each step across jagged rubble, yet instinct drives him forward. His amber eyes adjust to the darkness while his nose works steadily through layers of dust and leaking gas. Years ago he knew these environments better than open fields or city parks. Underground spaces had once been his battlefield. Confined spaces. Fear. Survivors hidden beneath impossible wreckage. The old instincts return one breath at a time. Somewhere ahead, faint beneath the chemical haze, there is another scent. Human. Weak. Buried under dust and panic. Valor pauses at a collapsed junction where two maintenance corridors split apart beneath hanging electrical cables. One path smells strongly of leaking fuel. The other carries traces of blood, concrete dust, and sweat. The Doberman lowers his head toward the second tunnel. Then another sound reaches him. Coughing. Faint. Human. Far ahead in the darkness. Back at the rescue perimeter, Nathan suddenly straightens. His gaze lifts toward the tunnel entrance. Around him, officers continue checking maps and structural scans while rainwater streams down reflective jackets and emergency vehicles idle along the barricaded street. Then Nathan hears it. A bark. Muffled and distant beneath layers of concrete, but unmistakable. Several heads turn instantly toward the collapsed entrance. The sound comes again. Sharp. Focused. Deliberate. Not panic. A signal. Nathan grabs a flashlight from the equipment crate beside him. He found something. Colin stares toward the tunnel, stunned. No way. Another bark echoes upward through the darkness, louder this time. Hope moves through the rescue site like electricity. Engineers scramble to compare old tunnel schematics while emergency crews prepare breathing masks and support ropes. Nathan secures his respirator with steady hands, though his heartbeat pounds hard enough to shake the straps against his chest. Deep underground, Valor continues barking into the darkness beside a narrow opening half buried beneath collapsed concrete slabs. Behind the debris, Commander Elias Mercer lies trapped beneath twisted support beams and broken transit piping, barely conscious but still breathing. Dust coats his face and jacket while weak flashlight beams flicker uselessly beside him. For several long seconds the commander stares at the Doberman through the darkness as though he cannot fully believe what he is seeing. Valor steps closer carefully despite the unstable rubble shifting around them. His breathing remains calm. Steady. Loyal. Then somewhere overhead, another section of tunnel groans. The sound beneath the tunnel changes everything. Until that moment, the rescue site had moved with the exhausted rhythm of people preparing for failure. Radios crackled. Engineers argued quietly over collapsing support structures. Rainwater streamed along blocked streets while emergency lights painted the wet pavement in restless shades of amber and blue. But now every officer standing near the fractured entrance hears the same thing echoing upward through layers of broken concrete. A dog barking with purpose. Sharp. Rhythmic. Alive. Nathan secures the final strap on his respirator while two rescue specialists from MRT, the Mountain Emergency Recovery Task Force specializing in confined space extractions, attach safety lines across their harnesses. Nearby, Deputy Officer Colin Reeves studies the shifting tunnel entrance with growing unease. The southern corridor is still unstable, he warns. If another section drops, you will not make it back out. Nathan shines his flashlight into the darkness below. Dust drifts through the beam like smoke. He found Mercer. Colin hesitates for a second before handing Nathan a secondary radio unit. Then bring them both home. Those words hang strangely in the cold air. Hours earlier, Colin had laughed at the old Doberman. Now his voice carries something else entirely. Respect. Nathan begins descending carefully through the collapsed service shaft while rescue crews feed support ropes behind him. The air grows colder underground. Damp. Heavy with chemical residue and concrete dust. Every movement sends small fragments of rubble skittering into unseen depths below. Somewhere ahead, Valor barks again. Closer now. The sound guides Nathan through twisted corridors where maintenance pipes hang from cracked ceilings and emergency lights flicker weakly against flooded concrete walls. Several times he has to crouch beneath fallen steel beams or squeeze sideways through narrow openings barely wide enough for his gear. The tunnel groans constantly around him. Like the city itself breathing through pain. Nearly 50 meters underground, Nathan finally sees the Doberman again. Valor stands beside a collapsed support section where shattered transit piping and broken concrete slabs have formed a small air pocket in the debris. His black and rust coat is gray with dust now. One side of his body trembles from exhaustion, yet he remains standing guard. His amber eyes immediately lock onto Nathan. Behind the rubble, Commander Elias Mercer struggles weakly to lift his head. His face is pale beneath layers of dust, and every breath sounds shallow through the thick underground air. A fractured beam traps part of his lower body beneath debris, though remarkably the surrounding concrete has not fully collapsed around him. Nathan? Mercer's voice barely rises above a whisper. Nathan kneels beside the opening quickly. Easy, sir. We are getting you out. Valor shifts closer to the trapped commander, pressing against the rubble as though shielding him from the unstable darkness surrounding them. Nathan notices faint blood stains along the Doberman's front leg where sharp concrete scraped him during the crawl inside, but the old dog ignores the injury completely. His attention never leaves Mercer. Somewhere deeper in the tunnel system, another section collapses with a heavy roar that vibrates through the floor beneath them. Dust explodes from overhead cracks. The commander closes his eyes briefly. The support wall is failing, he says weakly between breaths. You need to leave before it comes down. Nathan glances upward toward the fractured ceiling. Small stones continue falling around them. Time is disappearing. He activates his radio. This is Calder. I have visual on Commander Mercer. Alive but trapped approximately 52 meters inside the south maintenance corridor. Structural conditions unstable. Static crackles loudly before Colin's voice cuts through. Understood. Extraction team is moving into position now. Nathan studies the collapsed debris pinning Mercer in place. The opening is too narrow for standard lifting equipment. Even rescue personnel will struggle to reach them before the tunnel shifts again. Then he notices something else. A narrow drainage passage partially hidden behind fractured piping along the eastern wall. Barely visible beneath layers of rubble. Small. Tight. Dangerous. But possible. Valor notices it too. The Doberman steps toward the opening immediately, ears lifted despite the exhaustion weighing heavily across his aging body. Nathan stares at the narrow passage for one long second while the tunnel groans again around them. Then the old dog turns back toward him as if already understanding what must happen next. The narrow drainage passage looks less like an escape route and more like a wound carved through the broken tunnel wall. Water trickles slowly through it, carrying the bitter smell of rust and chemicals into the collapsing chamber where Nathan kneels beside Commander Mercer. The opening is barely 70 centimeters wide at its narrowest point. Too tight for a fully equipped rescue. Officer. Too unstable for heavy extraction gear. But not impossible for a dog that once spent years navigating spaces no human could survive. Valor stands near the entrance of the passage with his body angled toward the darkness beyond it, breathing slowly despite the exhaustion weighing across his aging frame. Dust clings to his coat. One front leg shakes faintly from strain, yet his amber eyes remain focused. Waiting. Listening. Above them, another deep vibration rolls through the tunnel system. The fractured ceiling groans loudly enough to send small fragments of concrete raining down around the trapped commander. Nathan shields Mercer instinctively as dust bursts across the cramped air pocket. The commander coughs weakly into his sleeve. "You need to get out before the whole corridor collapses," he says. Nathan shakes his head once. Not happening. He studies the narrow drainage route again while voices crackle through his radio beneath heavy interference. Engineers from the surface continue warning about worsening structural movement. Every few minutes another support section shifts several centimeters closer to failure. The city above them feels impossibly far away now. Somewhere beyond the layers of concrete and darkness, rain continues falling over Vancouver streets while emergency crews hold crowds behind barricades glowing beneath cold traffic lights. Down here beneath the station, time has narrowed into breath, dust, and instinct. Nathan reaches carefully into the utility pouch attached to his vest and removes a compact locator beacon fitted with a small emergency transmitter. He kneels beside Valor slowly. The Doberman immediately leans closer, calm despite the chaos surrounding them. Nathan clips the beacon securely onto the old tactical harness still wrapped around Valor's chest. The faded fabric is worn from years of service, edges frayed from countless rescue operations long forgotten by everyone except the dog wearing it. Nathan rests one gloved hand gently against Valor's neck. "Listen to me, partner," he says quietly. "Find the exit route. Then bark until we reach you." Valor watches him without blinking. Soldier to soldier. Trust without language. Nathan remembers the first weeks after bringing the Doberman home from the auction yard. The old dog had barely eaten during those first days. Every loud sound made him tense. Thunderstorms kept him awake through entire nights in Nathan's small apartment overlooking the Fraser River. Yet slowly, through silence and routine and patient mornings beside cold Vancouver rain, something in the Doberman began. Returning. Not obedience. Something deeper. Purpose. Nathan saw it first one evening near an abandoned training field outside Burnaby when Valor suddenly detected a missing teenager hidden beneath collapsed fencing long before emergency scanners located him. Nobody called it a miracle at the time. But Nathan remembered the look on the old dog's face afterward. Not pride. Relief. As though he had finally remembered who he was. Another heavy tremor suddenly shakes the tunnel. The drainage opening narrows slightly as fresh debris crashes somewhere beyond the wall. Commander Mercer closes his eyes briefly against the vibration. Nathan feels the ground shifting beneath one knee. Time is gone now. He looks directly into Valor's amber eyes one final time. Go. The Doberman does not hesitate. He lowers himself carefully into the narrow drainage passage and begins crawling forward through darkness thick with dust and chemical haze. Metal scrapes softly against his harness while shallow water splashes beneath his paws. For several seconds Nathan can still see the faint outline of his body moving deeper through the confined tunnel. Then even that disappears into blackness. Silence returns again except for the distant groan of collapsing concrete. Mercer watches the darkness where the dog vanished. Why would an animal risk this? Nathan stares toward the passage quietly while dust drifts through the flashlight beam like falling ash. Because somebody once taught him that no one gets left behind. Then somewhere far ahead beneath the city, faint but unmistakable, a single bark echoes through the darkness. The bark echoes again through the underground darkness, distant but steady, and every exhausted nerve inside Nathan's body locks onto the sound immediately. Commander Mercer hears it too. Beneath layers of broken concrete and leaking pipes, the old Doberman is still moving. Still searching. Still trying to lead them home. Nathan grips the rescue rope tighter as another tremor rolls through the collapsed station. Dust spills from overhead cracks in pale clouds, coating the narrow air pocket in a bitter haze that burns the throat with every breath. Somewhere far above them, emergency crews continue fighting the storm and unstable streets, but down here beneath Vancouver the world has narrowed into sound alone. A barking dog somewhere in the dark. He found an exit route, Nathan says quietly. Mercer studies him through the dust and flickering flashlight beams. You trust that animal with your life? Nathan glances toward the drainage tunnel where Valor disappeared. Already have. Through the radio clip to his shoulder, Colin Reeves suddenly breaks through heavy static. Nathan, we are losing structural stability on the eastern side. Engineers estimate less than 20 minutes before total collapse. Nathan exhales slowly. 20 minutes. Maybe less. He scans the trapped support beams pinning Mercer beneath fractured concrete. Standard extraction equipment will never reach them in time. The only chance now is moving the commander through the drainage system Valor discovered. Dangerous. Narrow. Almost impossible for an injured man. But still possible. Nathan kneels beside the debris carefully and begins testing loose sections of concrete with gloved hands. The commander winces as shifting rubble presses against his trapped leg. This is going to hurt, Nathan says softly. Mercer gives a tired smile beneath the dust. Son, at my age everything hurts. Another bark reaches them. Closer this time. Nathan's flashlight flickers briefly across the narrow drainage opening where shallow water continues flowing through fractured pipes toward some unseen maintenance corridor deeper underground. The old dog is waiting for them. Guiding them. Piece by piece, Nathan begins clearing smaller fragments from around Mercer while speaking steadily into the radio for surface coordination. Every movement sends sharp groans through the damaged tunnel structure. Concrete dust floats constantly through the weak light like winter fog drifting across the Fraser River. The air smells of rust, cold stone, and electrical smoke. Somewhere nearby water hisses from broken pressure lines hidden behind the walls. Finally one of the larger support fragments shifts enough for Mercer to pull free with a strained breath. He nearly collapses immediately, his legs weak from hours trapped beneath debris and toxic air. Nathan catches him before he falls. Easy. The commander struggles to steady himself while staring toward the drainage tunnel. You really think we fit through that? Nathan hears another faint bark echo ahead. We do not need much room. We just need enough. Back on the surface, rescue teams work frantically beneath freezing rain to stabilize collapsing sections above the eastern corridor. Emergency floodlights glow through drifting fog while downtown streets remain blocked by police barricades and rescue vehicles. Several younger officers stand silently near the tunnel entrance now, listening for the dog they once mocked. Nobody laughs anymore. Colin Reeves keeps his eyes fixed on the underground access monitor where Valor's emergency beacon moves slowly through. Damaged maintenance routes no machine had been able to map earlier. One rescue engineer shakes her head in disbelief. That old dog is finding paths the scanners completely missed. Colin says nothing for several seconds. Then quietly, almost to himself, he murmurs, maybe he remembers how to survive where we cannot. Deep underground, Nathan wraps one arm firmly around Mercer and guides him carefully toward the drainage passage. The opening looks even smaller up close. Water flows icy cold around fractured concrete edges while rusted pipes creak overhead beneath the pressure of shifting debris. Mercer coughs hard into his sleeve before glancing toward Nathan again. You know, he says weakly, I was there at the auction. Nathan pauses. What? The commander lowers his eyes briefly. I approved the retirement paperwork. Everyone said the dog was finished. Another bark echoes through the darkness ahead. Waiting for them. Mercer closes his eyes for 1 second as shame settles heavily across his exhausted face. Then the tunnel shudders violently again. The tunnel lurches hard enough to throw dust and broken concrete across the narrow chamber like a sudden winter avalanche. Nathan instinctively braces Commander Mercer against the wall as a deep cracking sound rolls somewhere overhead. For one terrifying second, the lights on Nathan's helmet flicker out completely, plunging everything into darkness thick enough to feel alive. Then the beam sputters back through the haze. The commander's breathing has become shallow now. Every cough scrapes painfully through the confined space while cold water flows around their boots toward the drainage tunnel ahead. Somewhere beyond the darkness, Valor barks again. Closer. Urgent this time. Waiting for them to move. Nathan tightens his grip around Mercer's arm. We go now. The commander nods weakly, though fear shadows his exhausted face. The drainage passage is even tighter than it first appeared. Jagged concrete presses inward from both sides while fractured pipes drip icy water steadily through the cramped tunnel. Nathan goes first, squeezing sideways through the narrow opening while pulling Mercer carefully behind him. Every movement grinds loose debris beneath their knees and elbows. The air smells metallic now, sharp with gas and wet stone. Several times Nathan hears the tunnel groan above them like an old ship fighting a storm. Then comes another bark. Louder. Valor is still ahead. Still guiding them forward through the dark maze beneath Vancouver. Behind Nathan, Mercer struggles through a narrow section where twisted piping leaves barely enough room to breathe. I cannot fit through this, he mutters hoarsely. Nathan shines his flashlight ahead. You can. The old commander closes his eyes briefly, gathering strength. Then he forces himself forward another painful meter through freezing water and drifting dust. The farther they crawl, the more unstable the drainage tunnel becomes. Sections of ceiling sag dangerously low while fresh cracks spread across the concrete walls like spiderwebs. Somewhere above them, rescue sirens echo faintly through layers of earth and collapsed infrastructure. Nathan checks the emergency beacon clipped to his wrist monitor. Valor's signal is moving steadily north toward an abandoned maintenance exit nearly 80 meters from the original collapse zone. Somehow the old dog found a route even the city transit maps failed to show. Another memory flashes suddenly through Nathan's mind. 6 months earlier. A cold morning outside Vancouver near the old North Shore training grounds. Several younger officers had laughed quietly while Valor struggled during an obstacle course exercise. One even suggested retiring the dog permanently before he became a liability. Nathan still remembers the silence afterward when the Doberman suddenly detected a volunteer hidden beneath nearly 2 meters of snow during a winter simulation drill. None of the electronic scanners found her first. Only Valor. That day, the old dog walked back across the frozen field carrying no pride in his posture. Just calm purpose. Like rescue work was not heroism to him. Only duty. The tunnel shakes violently again. This time the tremor is followed by a heavy collapse somewhere behind them. A burst of cold air rushes through the drainage corridor carrying fresh dust and darkness. Mercer freezes immediately. The entrance. Nathan looks back toward the collapsing tunnel behind them where thick clouds of debris now choke the passage they escaped minutes earlier. Had they waited even slightly longer, none of them would have survived the collapse. Ahead, another bark cuts through the darkness. Stronger now. Hope moving through stone. Nathan crawls faster despite the pain burning through his shoulders and knees. Finally the narrow drainage route widens slightly into an old utility corridor lined with rusted maintenance ladders and emergency wiring long abandoned by the city. And there, standing beneath a weak shaft of pale light filtering through a damaged street grate overhead, is Valor. The old Doberman's chest rises heavily with exhaustion. Dust covers nearly every inch of his coat. One front paw bleeds lightly from torn concrete, but he remains standing tall despite the strain pulling at his aging body. The moment he sees Nathan emerge from the tunnel with Mercer behind him, his tail moves once against the wet floor. Small. Slow. Relieved. Nathan stares at the dog for one long second beneath the pale emergency light filtering down from the city above. Then the old Doberman suddenly turns back toward the darkness behind them and growls low in his throat. Another sound is coming through the collapsing tunnel. The growl deepens inside Valor's chest, low and steady beneath the dripping echo of the abandoned utility corridor. Nathan turns immediately toward the darkness behind them while cold air rushes through the tunnel carrying dust and the sharp scent of fractured concrete. Then he hears it too. Metal groaning. Heavy. Close. Somewhere behind the collapsed drainage route, another section of the station is beginning to fail. Commander Mercer grips the rusted wall beside him to stay upright, his breathing ragged from exhaustion and toxic air exposure. Above them, faint shafts of pale light spill through the damaged street grate nearly 4 meters overhead, but the old maintenance ladder leading toward it hangs twisted and partially detached from the wall. Their exit is still out of reach. Valor barks sharply once toward the darkness behind them. Warning. Nathan immediately activates his radio through heavy static. We found an upper utility corridor beneath Granville North access. We need extraction support now. Colin Reeves answers almost instantly. We have your beacon signal. Rescue crews are moving into position above you. Nathan scans the unstable corridor carefully. Water runs beneath their boots in shallow streams while old electrical conduits spark faintly overhead. Every few seconds another tremor ripples through the concrete around them. The city itself sounds wounded. Then comes the first collapse. A violent crash erupts deep behind them as part of the drainage tunnel caves inward completely. Dust explodes through the narrow corridor in a gray wave thick enough to blot out the weak overhead light. Mercer stumbles hard against the wall coughing while Nathan instinctively shields him. Through the chaos, Valor remains standing between them and the darkness, body tense despite the exhaustion dragging at every movement. The old Doberman does not retreat. He watches the collapsing tunnel like a soldier guarding the final doorway home. We need to move, Nathan says urgently. He studies the damaged ladder again. Several rungs are bent, and the upper mounting brackets have partially separated from the concrete wall. It may hold one person at a time. Or it may tear free completely. Above them, faint voices echo through the grate. Rescue crews. Close now. Nathan helps Mercer toward the ladder carefully. Every movement costs the older commander visible effort. His legs tremble badly beneath him after hours trapped underground. Still, he forces himself upward one painful step at a time while Nathan braces the unstable ladder from below. Rust flakes drift through the flashlight beams. Somewhere beneath them another support beam snaps with a deep cracking sound that vibrates through the floor. The entire corridor shudders violently. Mercer freezes halfway up the ladder. Nathan looks up sharply. The commander's eyes have shifted downward toward the Doberman below them. Valor remains standing near the collapsed tunnel entrance, breathing heavily now, one front paw barely carrying weight after the crawl through broken concrete. Dust covers his muzzle and chest. Yet his amber eyes stay fixed on the darkness behind them. Watching. Listening. Waiting for everyone else to escape first. Mercer's voice softens beneath the distant rumble of collapsing stone. He stayed behind to protect us. Nathan feels something tighten painfully inside his chest because he knows the commander is right. The old dog had not stopped once to save himself. Not when the tunnel collapsed. Not when the gas thickened underground. Not even now while the corridor continued failing around them. Another crash erupts somewhere deeper below. This time the floor beneath Valor shifts sharply as fresh debris spills into the utility passage. The Doberman loses footing for one terrifying second before steadying himself again against the wet concrete. Nathan moves instantly toward him, but Valor barks sharply at him. One bark. Commanding. Stay back. It is the same field signal rescue dogs use when detecting unstable terrain too dangerous for handlers to cross. Even now, exhausted and injured, the old Doberman is still working. Still protecting. Nathan kneels slowly beside him despite the shaking floor beneath them. Come on, partner, he whispers. Mission is over. For one long second Valor simply stares at him through drifting dust and flickering emergency light. Then another sound cuts through the corridor above them. Metal grinding. Rescue workers forcing open the street grate overhead. Fresh cold rain air suddenly pours into the tunnel carrying the scent of wet pavement, diesel engines, and the city waiting above. And for the first time since entering the collapse zone, the old Doberman's rigid posture finally begins to soften. Cold rain falls steadily over downtown Vancouver by the time the rescue crews finally pull them out of the collapsed utility shaft. The city streets glow beneath rows of emergency floodlights while steam rises from soaked pavement like breath drifting into the night. Officers from Terra and medical personnel crowd around the fractured street opening as Commander Elias Mercer emerges first, exhausted and barely able to stand without support. The moment the rescue teams realize he is alive, a wave of relief moves through the entire scene. Radios burst with updates. Someone near the barricades quietly says, "They got him out." But Nathan barely hears any of it. His eyes remain fixed on the darkness beneath the open grate. Waiting. Then Valor appears slowly beneath the pale rescue lights. The old Doberman climbs the final section of ladder carefully, one exhausted step at a time, his soaked black and rust coat streaked gray with concrete dust and tunnel grime. The emergency beacon attached to his harness blinks weakly against the rain. For one suspended moment, the entire rescue site falls silent. No one laughs now. No one calls him retired. Officers who once mocked the old dog simply stare as he reaches the surface beside Nathan and finally lowers himself onto the cold pavement, breathing hard but alive. Deputy Officer Colin Reeves removes his cap quietly. One by one, several others do the same. The rain continues falling softly around them while distant ambulance sirens fade through the harbor fog. Commander Mercer studies the Doberman for a long moment before slowly stepping forward despite protests from paramedics trying to stabilize him. His face is pale beneath the dirt and exhaustion, but there is something honest in his eyes now. Regret. Respect. Gratitude. He kneels carefully beside the old dog despite the pain in his legs. Valor watches him calmly, ears twitching once beneath the rain. Mercer reaches out with trembling fingers and gently rests his hand against the worn tactical harness still wrapped around the Doberman's chest. "I was wrong about you," he says quietly. The words almost disappear beneath the rain and distant rescue radios, but everyone near enough hears them anyway. Nathan stands beside them in silence. Water drips from the brim of his jacket while flashing amber lights reflect across the flooded streets around the collapse zone. He remembers the auction yard again for just a second. The rusted cages. The cold fluorescent lights. The quiet laughter when he paid $30 for an old dog everyone else had already forgotten. Looking at Valor now beneath the storm and rescue lights, the number feels almost absurd. How do you place value on loyalty like this? On courage that crawls willingly into darkness so others can live? Nearby, one of the younger rescue officers slowly approaches holding a thermal blanket meant for the dog. He kneels awkwardly beside Valor and carefully wraps it around his shoulders. The young man swallows hard before speaking. "Good work, sir." Nathan notices several older officers glance away quickly after hearing that. Not out of embarrassment. Out of emotion they are trying unsuccessfully to hide. Because everyone standing there understands something now. The old Doberman did not just rescue Commander Mercer tonight. He rescued something inside all of them. The belief that age erases purpose. That broken things stay broken forever. That second chances are weakness instead of grace. Hours later, after the rescue crews clear most of the barricades and the rain softens into mist drifting through the empty streets, Nathan finally sits quietly beside Valor outside the emergency veterinary unit parked near the harbor. The city feels strangely peaceful now. Exhausted. Alive. Valor lies stretched beside him beneath a warm blanket while a portable heater hums softly nearby. One front paw is bandaged. His breathing has finally slowed into steady calm. Nathan removes the old service tag attached to the Doberman's worn tactical harness and turns it slowly between his fingers beneath the yellow streetlight. Scratched metal. Years of history. Missions nobody remembers anymore except the two survivors sitting quietly together beneath the fading storm. After a while, Valor lifts his head slightly and rests it against Nathan's knee. Nathan smiles faintly and scratches gently behind the old dog's ear while distant foghorns drift across Vancouver harbor like low music in the dark. Neither of them speaks. They do not need to. Some bonds are stronger in silence. And somewhere above the sleeping city, rain continues falling softly over streets that almost lost hope until one forgotten dog carried it back home.